What's up, everybody? It is your lender, Art McCoy, licensed in a whole bunch of states nationwide. I'll list them down below in the caption, but wanted to explain to you the early takeaways from the NAR settlement. And it's still early, still has to be signed by the judge and approved by the courts. And even then, it won't take effect for, till July or something like that. But still wanted to kind of break things down and just the early thoughts on the whole thing and how it could impact buyers. What's going to be the net sum difference to buyers at the end of the day? How could it all shake out? So in order to do that, I got to kind of explain where things are at and who can pay who and why, and break that part down. So a part of this is, number one, the buyer and the buyer's agent, right? Those two, that party over here needs to have a prearranged agreement on what the buyer is going to pay the buyer's agent for their services. Buyer's agents do a lot of things, during the transaction. They don't just find the property, guys. Come on. So they do a lot of things. They negotiate, they protect you, remove contingencies on time, help you find great vendors to do inspections and a whole bunch of things. Negotiate on your behalf. That is a massive one, guys, that I think is just so underestimated. But anyway, not trying to, glaze agents or anything like that. But anyway, so now on, in a sense, the buyer needs to pay the buyer's agent. There is a way for the seller to pay the buyer's agent. It's through what we call concessions. The seller can provide concessions to the buyer for buying their property, and the buyer will have a prearranged agreement with their buyer's agent for payment, right? So that way it kind of goes from the seller to the buyer and the buyer to the buyer's agent. So let's talk about that and how it all could pencil out and shake out using this fake money here. So let's just say typically real estate's done in percentages, but for the sake of only having $40,000 here, let's just use a dollar amount to make it easy. So let's say that the seller and the seller's agent has agreed to chip in $20,000 of concessions towards the buyer. Well, the buyer is gonna, once again, before they even see the house, before the buyer's agent opens up the home for the buyer to look at, they're gonna have an agreement written out stating, hey, I'm gonna represent you. If we're representing you, my payment is gonna be, let's say, $20,000, right? We're using round numbers here. So boom, they love the house, they write the offer, they get in the contract, and when we get all the numbers, we're seeing the numbers. Okay, well, the seller has agreed to chip in $20,000. The buyer and the buyer's agent have an agreement over here for $20,000. Guess what, guys? $20,000 is going from the seller to the buyer, from the buyer with their written agreement into the buyer's agent's pocket. Everything is good. There's no problems. No net change whatsoever. All this was for, I don't want to say for nothing, but in that situation, everything is perfect, right? So here's another scenario. Let's say the seller agrees to pay $30,000 over here instead of, whatever that number was, 10 or 20. Seller agrees to pay $30,000. The buyer and the buyer's agent have an agreement for 20, right? So boom, let's knock out 20 there. We have an excess and $10,000 in seller concessions. Boom. Well, now the buyer's net sum out of pocket would decrease still by $10,000, which is awesome. Buyers bringing in less money to close. So that is a great situation to have in a sense, right? So let's do another one. On this one, let's say the seller is only willing to chip in $10,000 and there's an agreement over here for 20, right? So $10,000 obviously gets smoked, but now we're SOL on $10,000. Where's this other $10,000 going to come from? Well, it would need to come from the buyer. There's going to be a shortage there of $10,000 on their side that they would need to bring in $10,000 to make this thing go, make it all work. I mean, can the buyer's agent agree to a reduced agreement to 10? Technically, or maybe meet in the middle, or maybe they can renegotiate at that time, or maybe as a lender we can introduce maybe some down payment assistance to cover that gap. That could be a solution. It needs to come from somewhere. So could be some upside there, right? If sellers willing to chip in more and less than what the agreement is over on this side. Could be some downside there if the sellers want to chip in less than what the agreement is over here on this side. Just taking a step back here, it really kind of does start with the seller and the seller's agent on what concessions they agree upon, right? So just really hoping that side obviously gets, they put their best foot forward, because the better that they put their foot forward on this, and more funds concessions that they offer, especially in this market, that's going to open up the buyer pool and make the buyer pool larger, therefore make obtaining a higher price a lot more probable than if they were to just offer a reduced amount, and now there's not as many buyers that want to compete for that property because their buyers are going to be coming up short, having to cover this gap between what they've negotiated and agreed upon with their buyer's agent. So I hope that all makes sense. If you guys like that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. It's still all early. I'm not an attorney, by the way, nor a tax person, but I could definitely be your loan guy depending on what state you're in. So take care, have a great night, and more to come on this soon. Talk to you soon.